Welcome, dear listener, to another episode of the Unrelenting Alchemist. Today, we journey deep into the shadows, into that sacred crucible known across mystical traditions as the dark night of the soul, whether whispered in secret esoteric orders, murmured in the writings of mystics, or even symbolized in alchemical retorts and arcane rituals. The dark night of the soul, what mystic St. John of the Cross described as a purifying spiritual desolation, is a universal threshold. It marks the death of the lesser self and the emergence of a greater, more luminous truth. Tonight, we're going to explore this profound inner transformation through the lenses of magic, mythology, alchemy, occultism, as well as Eastern philosophies like Buddhism, Taoism, and Hinduism. So let's begin our descent into the inner void where the true self is kindled in the darkness. Part 1. The Mystic's Fire. The phrase dark night of the soul was first coined by 16th century Spanish mystic St. John of the Cross. For him, it was not a metaphor for depression or suffering alone. It was a spiritually necessary ordeal, one in which the soul is stripped of all its illusions, all its insecurities and images of God in preparation for divine union. You see, this night is not punishment, but purification. It's a radical unlearning. The soul's attachments to identity, control, and emotional constellations are burned away. And though it feels like abandonment, it is in truth the soul drawing closer to the divine light, so close that in fact all lesser lights are eclipsed. In Kabbalah, a similar teaching emerges. The soul descends into Gevura, the realm of discipline and constriction, before returning to Chesed, the realm of loving kindness. This descent is not regressive, it is the necessary contraction before expansion. Like the dark moon that precedes its waxing, or the Shekinah in exile before restoration. The mystics teach us, do not fear the darkness. It is the veil before the face of the real is unleashed. Part 2. The Alchemical Journey. Now let us pivot to the alchemical model. The art of inner transmutation. In alchemy, the dark night corresponds to nigredo, or blackening, the first stage of the magnum opus, the great work. In this phase, the prima materia, the raw, undifferentiated matter, is subjected to putrefaction. It rots, it dissolves, the old form dies. But why? Because only through disintegration can reintegration occur. Nigredo must happen for albedo, the whitening or purification, to follow, and then it's rubedo, the reddening, the unification of opposites, the birth of the philosopher's stone. This process is not just chemical. It is deeply psychological and spiritual. The alchemist stares into the void of themselves, the lead of unconscious habits, letting go trauma, ego, illusion, and these must be reduced to ashes, so what remains? The gold of awakened consciousness. Here, we see that the dark night is not just suffering, it is a form of sacred alchemy. Part 3. Occult initiation and magical abandonment. In the occult traditions, particularly in Western ceremonial magic, thelema, and hermetic systems, the dark night is understood as an initiatory abyss. The aspirant passes through stages of awakening. They perform rituals, invoke divine names, study sacred symbols, but at some point, something changes. The rituals cease to work, the inner light grows dim, the spirit guides are silent. This is the abyss, often personified by the demon Corazon. This is the space where the ego is annihilated, where the false self tries to cling to old power structures. The adept must let go of identity as magician, as thinker, as self. This magical abandonment isn't failure, it is the final initiation. Only by surrendering all sense of mastery can true gnosis occur. The adept dies to themselves and is reborn, not as controller of the cosmos, but as a server of its deeper will. Part 4. Mythological parallels. Throughout mythologies, the dark night of the soul is depicted through journeys into the underworld. Inanna, the Sumerian goddess of love and war, descended into the realm of her sister, Ereshkigal. She was stripped of her garments, her symbols of power, at each of the 7 gates. Finally, she was left naked and dead on a hook. Only through sacrifice and transformation was she finally resurrected and now reborn. Dionysus was torn apart and sacrificed, symbolizing the fragmentation of the self before his reassembly and rise as the god of ecstasy and paradox. Persephone was abducted into the underworld, initiating the seasonal cycle of death and rebirth. Her story echoes the soul's journey through pain into wisdom. Even Yehoshua had his moment at Gethsemane on the cross. My God, why have you forsaken me? This quintessential cry from the heart of the dark night. These myths tell us that descent is not the end. It is the path to transformation. The death is symbolic, and it's necessary for rebirth into spiritual maturity. Part 5. Buddhism and the emptiness of self. In Buddhism, especially in Zen and Vajrayana traditions, the dark night of the soul appears as a confrontation with sunyata, total emptiness. When one meditates and meditates deeply, eventually the mind begins to dismantle its own construction. The ego dissolves. The I who observes is revealed to be just another thought, impermanent, insubstantial. This can trigger a profound existential crisis. What is called in Zen the great doubt. All concepts, beliefs, identities fall away. What remains is the bare awareness, raw and unfixed. Some practitioners, especially during intensive retreats, experience terrifying nights of spiritual despair or nihilism. But teachers remind us that this is not the end. It is the unveiling of Tathagata, the Buddha nature, the luminous and empty, simultaneously nothing and everything. In Buddhist psychology, this is akin to the stage of dissolution in the death and rebirth cycle. Ego dies, but clarity dawns. Part 6. Taoism and the embrace of the void. Taoism teaches through paradox. It speaks softly to the soul lost in confusion. The Tao Te Ching says, darkness within darkness, the gateway to all understanding. The dark night in Taoism is not resisted, it is surrendered to. Like water that flows into the low places, the sage lets go of striving, identity, and control. The Tao is not reached through effort, but through emptiness. In Taoist internal alchemy, this process is mirrored in the cycle of death and rebirth within the Danshan, or energy centers. Old patterns must decay for the inner elixir to form. This is not tragic, it is cosmic law. To embrace the dark is to align with the Tao. As it says, the way forward often feels like retreat. The greatest clarity comes from the deepest stillness. Part 7. Hinduism and the Karmic Trial. In Hinduism, the dark night of the soul finds its voice in the Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna, the warrior prince, collapses in despair before battle. His soul trembles. He does not wish to fight, but Lord Krishna, his charioteer and divine guide, urges him, you must fulfill your dharma, you must fulfill your sacred duty. This moment is archetypal. Arjuna must face not just the battlefield, but the battle within. In the path of yoga, especially Jnana Yoga and Bhakti Yoga, there comes a stage when the seeker feels lost. The mantras feel hollow. The gods seem distant. Karma unfolds ever so ruthlessly. This is the burning of the samskaras, the latent impressions of ego and desire. It is a necessary purification. As Ramana Maharshi and others taught, the ego must die for the self, the Atman, to shine. The dark night in Hindu terms is not just despair, it is tapas, sacred austerity, fire that reveals the jewel of the soul. Part 8, the volunteer soul and the planetary crisis. Now we widen this lens. In many spiritual traditions, particularly in theosophy, New Age mysticism, and channeled messages, there is the idea of the volunteer soul, a soul who chose to incarnate to help Earth ascend. These souls, often labeled indigo, starseeds, wanderers, report early alienation, emotional intensity, and strange spiritual crises that mirror the dark night. Why is it so? Because they are undergoing the initiation. The planet itself is a crucible. Gaia is purging dense energies, and these souls connected to higher realms are absorbing and transmuting collective pain. You see, some of these karmic souls that are far gone, far lost, may very well be purged forever and not return to anybody. The dark night isn't personal, it's planetary. To survive is to anchor light. To emerge from it is to become a healer, a guide, a node in the Earth's awakening. Part 9, consenting to love's surgery. What then is the meaning of this oh so torturous long night? It is not simply suffering. It is love's surgery. It is the divine asking, will you let me remove what cannot come with you into the next phase? They can't come with you to the next phase. How often have you heard that? And we must say yes with our hearts, but we scream with our egos. The pain is real. The confusion is real. The night is not abandonment. It is intimacy. It is the soul being reoriented, realigned, rewired. And when the dawn comes, and it will come, it brings with it a new self, a self not built from personality, but from presence, not from story, but from stillness. Conclusion, the embrace of the whole. So wherever you are, listener, whether in clarity or in confusion, in light or in shadow, know you this. The night is a passage. The fire is not here to destroy you. It is here to forge you. To walk through the dark night of the soul is to join a lineage of mystics, warriors, saints, and seekers who dared to meet the void and find God there. May you find the courage to descend. May you discover the gold in your ashes, and may your soul emerge radiant, reborn, and ready to serve a world so desperate for luminous beings. You will acquire your philosopher's stone. Thank you for joining me in the sacred hour. This has been the Unrelenting Alchemist. Until next time, walk wisely, walk bravely, and when the dark calls, answer not with fear, but with true fire. And if I don't see you, just remember, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.